everything in moderation, right? Yeah, that doesn't apply all the time in life. It's a nice thing for people to say, but it doesn't always make sense, does it? Hey, what's shaking bacon? My name's Bruno Panucci. I hope you're doing well. So a lot of people out there, when you tell them you're doing a carnivore diet, they tend to hear what you're saying and they go, okay, and it doesn't usually make sense to most people, right? Some people are a little fascinated by it. Some people are puzzled by it. Some people just roll their eyes at it and they think that you're a wacko for doing it. But what they don't get, because they're just not in the proper mindset, is you're dealing often with a sugar or carbohydrate addiction. And when you go to a zero carb diet, they think everything in moderation. Why can't you just have one bite of ice cream or one bite of cake or just one little slice of cake? You know, if you just did everything in moderation, you'll be fine because that works for them. Or maybe they think it works for them, but they don't necessarily have that health that you want to have by doing a strict carnivore diet. And so they can't wrap their minds around it when you're doing something that seems really extreme to them. But you know what's really extreme? Binging on junk food. I used to have 3 containers of Haagen-Dazs in one sitting. I can't moderate junk food. And I think a lot of people out there in YouTube land can't moderate junk food as well. Now, ice cream was my big thing. Ice cream and pizza. I could have a whole extra large pizza and I would be satisfied eating that pizza, but I could not manage just one slice. The only way I could manage one slice was if I threw the rest of that pizza out. But you know what happens if you're not satisfied with that amount you had when you have an addiction? You go out and you buy more of it afterwards. So say you're at someone's place and you think, oh, one slice of pizza. What's the big deal? It's just one time. Now, if you're a moderator, you can do that and you're okay. But if you're an abstainer, you just can't. And that's what they can't appreciate. And when they try and talk you into having that one slice, wherever it is, or maybe it's a TV commercial, maybe it's yourself. You're trying to convince yourself, maybe just one slice is okay, or one mouthful is okay. It's not. If you're an abstainer, it's not. That's why I've been strict with carnivore for a few years now, and I struggled for a really long time being strict for years before I became a strict carnivore. And you have to appreciate, I haven't had a lick, taste, or bite of anything off a carnivore diet because it's too slippery of a slope. I might be able to handle it one time. I might even be able to handle it 2 times, but that's it. And I've kind of gone down that road myself before where after being off sugar completely and carbohydrates for 1 year, I found that even that one time was okay. And I thought, wow. And I convinced myself I can go back to having some junk food every now and then in my diet. And I learned that 3 servings a week, and I mean servings like they say on the size of the package, like a moderate serving, like a small scoop of ice cream. That was something I was doing, and it still created that addiction. It brought it back to life, and I went and just binged afterwards. Now, that was when I went 3 times a week. Now, I was okay at 2 times a week, but I won't even try 1 time a week or a month or a year because I don't trust myself. I've been down that road and I know where it goes. Eventually, it goes to me justifying and going down that road where I think I can have that food. And there's nothing worse than putting yourself in a position where you've done all that work, you've accomplished a lot health-wise, and I'm not even talking just about weight loss. That's a nice accomplishment, but like where most of my health problems are in remission, that's a wonderful place to be because I had a lot of health problems that accumulated. I mean, I used to be 465 pounds and I'm still a big guy, but there's a lot of health problems that come along with someone who's at that weight. When you're young, you can pull it off without many health problems, as weird as that sounds. You could be a teenager and have that weight, and you're still only going to have a certain amount of health problems. But the longer you stay sick and overweight to that level or any level like that, to your proportions, I'm 6'2". So when I was at 465 pounds, that could be the equivalent of a 5'7" guy at 400 pounds. Or maybe 375 pounds. And if you know that you can't moderate, then that's why you're here. Because if you could moderate, you wouldn't be listening to this video. You probably wouldn't even be trying carnivore unless you're an athlete and you're just trying to up your game. You just wanted to see what it was like. But for most people who have addiction to carbohydrates and sugar, they're sort of in denial. They don't realize how deep it goes. And that's where I was the first number of years when I was trying carnivore. I didn't appreciate how severe my sugar addiction was. And you have to respect the fact that maybe you can't moderate either. And how do you get someone maybe you're living with or a family member or a friend that you're talking to? Because let's face it, people who are just acquaintances, that doesn't matter. If they want to give you a hard time about it, they're not trying to give you a hard time, but maybe they're just trying to debate you on the benefits of it. They think it's too extreme. Well, they're not a part of your day-to-day life, so you don't really care too much about that. You at least want to have some basic support from friends and family. I mean, a basic level where they're not going to roll their eyes at you for doing what you're doing. They're not going to make you feel dumb or silly for doing what you're doing or what you're trying to do. You want people who are going to kind of at least appreciate what you're doing. And here's one clear way to make them appreciate it. I think my dad, more than anyone I've met, I've had the odd client here and there who said the same thing, but my dad most consistently would always say, you know what, just moderate. You just moderate. It took my dad 60 years to learn how to moderate. He didn't start moderating food till his mid-70s. And he just learned that if he just has a little bit of this and a little bit of that all throughout the day, he's fine and he can maintain his weight really well and his health for the most part. But, you know, he's in his early mid-80s now and he still finds moderation works for him. Well, he doesn't have a sugar and carbohydrate addiction. And I finally said to him once, well, you used to smoke. He smoked till he was 45 or so. But I finally got him to understand where he stopped saying this moderation argument to me. When I said, why don't you just have one cigarette a day? Why don't you just have one cigarette a week? Why don't you just have one cigarette with every meal? You know what? You used to smoke, a pack, 2 packs a day, whatever it was. Why is it that when you quit, and he quit more than one time before he finally quit, and he had a sort of out-of-body experience. He always had it was like an epiphany where he stopped one day and looked at the cigarette and realized, what the hell am I doing? And he tossed it and never looked back. And I eventually did that with carbohydrates and sugar. Now, he understands that. It's like a little cigarette. It's a little stick. And it owned him. And he didn't like it. He didn't like the fact that something owned him. And it's one of the few times where pride can be a good thing in life, where he was too proud to let something own him. For me, when I realized it, I realized how deep my addiction went, and I realized I had to surrender to it and appreciate that it was an addiction, not something that I was just struggling with. I had to appreciate the depth of what an addiction meant, and that was my problem. I wasn't appreciating it. So moderation doesn't work for me, and they can't answer that. They finally understand. For you, that chocolate cake or that mashed potatoes or whatever it is you're going into that you struggle with a regular daily meal with your family is the equivalent of that cigarette for them. I never struggled with nicotine, so I could easily say to my dad, well, just suck it up. Just stop smoking. What's the problem, right? You're blowing your money, literally blowing your money into thin air. So why are you doing this? There's nothing good that happens with it, and you're only getting bad. So why didn't you stop sooner? Why didn't you just learn to moderate? What's the big deal? And they'll get it. Some people struggle with finances. Some people struggle with alcohol. Some people struggle with drugs. Some people struggle with cigarettes. Everyone struggles with something. Maybe it's monogamy. Everyone struggles with something, and that's where you can meet them on their level when they're trying to debate you on why you're trying to be strict carnivore. And for you, you're doing it for your own mental health in some cases, for your physical health. And once you get there and it's easy and you don't have to worry about the challenge of day-to-day struggling with sugar and carbohydrate addiction, because after a while, it's effortless. And I can't stress that enough. It's completely effortless. When you get there, life is good. Life is easy. And it's just like it's easy for a smoker who hasn't smoked in 6 months or 3 years or 10 years. That cigarette doesn't call to them like it used to. So you have to understand that it's an addiction. You have to understand the depth of what an addiction does to you and what your weak points are. And you have to surrender to the fact that you have an addiction. At that point, seek help. It's always important to understand that when you need something and you're trying to deal with an addiction, it's not easy to do on your own. You're going to relapse every now and then. And maybe you've already relapsed a bunch of times and you want to stop that cycle. I highly recommend you get help. Maybe it's coaching from another carnivore. Maybe it's a carnivore accountability buddy. We'll talk about that more in another video coming up. But what you need to do is figure out your game plan and how to set yourself up for success. And let's work with that and figure out if you're a moderator or an abstainer, and get the people in your life to understand why you're doing what you're doing and try and make it relatable to them. And you'll find it'll go from a debate to a conversation where they'll go, okay, and they'll meditate on that and they'll learn to appreciate that. So anyway, thanks a lot. I hope this video was helpful for you. Take care.